that. Perhaps even, let's compare it to the size of my head. Andre the...
From Grenoble in the French Alps, weighing 477 pounds, the 8th wonder of the world, Andre the Giant.
He was stronger than all of us. He was bigger than all of us.
Oh! Back from Andre the Giant off the top turnbuckle.
He kept everybody in line. He was the guy.
He was famous on a different level, literally the biggest celebrity in the world.
How about your diet? How much food do you eat a day?
You knew you were seeing something unique in the world.
Andre was an attraction. There was no level of comfort. It had to be an uncomfortable life.
Here's only one.
They think of him as this legendary drinker. He drank because he was in pain.
People would not leave him alone.
The reality of who he was getting more intense. He knew he wasn't going to win.
Welcome to the one and only Foul Mouths Network. This is Foul Mouth Ken, and this is my Andre the Giant HBO documentary review. Of the 8th wonder of the world, Andre the Giant.
Alright, let me stop fucking around. Guys, I just watched this documentary on HBO about the one and only Andre the Giant. And man, what a documentary I just watched, guys. I'm not even joking, like, seriously. This was one hell of a documentary. There's a lot of never seen before photos and videos of Andre. I mean, the interviews that were in this video, too, were really just... Vince McMahon crying at the end. I mean, I don't want to give too much away for you guys. Spoiler alert on this. If you have not watched the documentary yet, and you're planning on seeing it soon, and you don't want to ruin it, then spoiler alert for this one, guys. Definitely. Andre the Giant, this documentary by HBO, and I got to give full credit to HBO, man. What a documentary these dudes came up with. They always come up with great documentaries, HBO, over the years. For the last 30 years, HBO has been cutting edge when it comes to documentaries. Real, like, riveting shit. I remember the Iceman documentaries they had, and just a number of great documentaries. This one definitely falls into the category of an HBO great documentary, because this was unbelievable, man. I mean, what do you say? The life and story of a great human being that just transcends everything. He really the whole episode was just really, really cool. I mean, it wasn't an episode, but the whole documentary was just really cool. It showed him his early life. Obviously, they started off with how he got involved with wrestling and who he was, wrestling at that time. And he was 15 years old, and it showed you how he started growing at 15, 16 years old. And I mean, it was really a hell of a documentary. And like I said, they showed a lot of really great interviews, man. Vince McMahon was interviewed throughout the whole documentary. And some of the shit he said, pissed me off. I got to tell you. And I'm sure when you guys watch it, if you watch it, you'll think the same thing. And then some of the stuff he was saying and how he was acting really, like, almost teared me up, man. Like, because, let's face it, if you're over the age of 35, you've grown up with Vince McMahon in the Hogan era, and also in the the Attitude Era with Stone Cold Steve Austin and, you know, that whole thing. So, you know, you've been around the block with him, and you guys, you know the deal. And he's like almost a hard, cold-hearted fuck. You know what I mean, Vince? He's a cold-hearted fuck. I can't say that. Cold-hearted fuck, Vince McMahon. We all know that. But he also does have this other side to him that, and we know that other side too, which he loves these guys. A lot of these wrestlers who make him billions, he loves them. You know, listen, I don't know. I just, there was, you know, I wanted to fucking really shit on Vince right now because it really, some of the stuff pissed me off, because at the end of the documentary, he's basically, you know, saying that Andre was bitter with him at the end, like really bitter with him, to the point where, you know, they just kind of fucking just went their own ways and did their own thing, and that was it, you know? Which, you know, that sucks. They had a very good, loving, tender relationship at one point, you'll see in the documentary, and then it all turned to shit, you know? And it was at the end of his career. Oh, sorry about that. I just electrocuted my dick. But yeah, it was at the end of his career, and he basically was very bitter towards McMahon at that point, and just wrestling in general, because his body just gave out. And you'll see in the documentary when you watch it, it's kind of sad, because the ending was really shitty for him, because he knew he was starting to go, you know, and Vince knew he was starting to go, so Vince kind of like put him out to pasture, so to say, and Andre still wanted to be there and still be a part of everything, even though his body was like just raveted, like just really just torn to shit at this point, and he couldn't really do much more. It was kind of the end of the road, and you know, Vince saw it, and a lot of people saw it, and they knew that you know, this was it for him. He can't perform as an in-ring wrestler anymore. It was just, you know. So long story short, you know, Vince had to eventually go to him after WrestleMania 3, sometime after that, and tell him, hey, you know, that's it. You know, like every time you get in the ring, it's not good no more. He couldn't even carry himself right. He was starting to fall in the ring. He always had to have a hand on the rope. He always had to have a hand on the opponent to stand him upright. And things just got terribly, terribly wrong at the end of that career. And he basically knew that, you know, it was over. But rewinding a little bit from that, there was a part that Vince was talking about. And, you know, also Hogan was in this documentary a lot. Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea, and you know, that fuck got me choked up too, because if he's not bullshitting, which I don't know whether to believe this guy or not, Hulk Hogan, I want to believe him, but you know, it's shown that he's a bullshit artist sometimes. But you know, he had massive amount of respect, and let me tell you guys something. When you watch this documentary, if you do, you'll see parts where they show you what Andre was like sometimes, and Andre basically did and said whatever the fuck he wanted at certain times. Now, he was a nice guy too, but for some reason there was this guy inside Andre that every once in a while just, you know, it didn't like people. I mean, can you blame him? You know, the world was made for people normal size, you know. And in this documentary, you actually see Andre say, you know, the world was fitted for people who are blind and people who are, you know, blind or deaf, or, you know, and there's something for all kind of handicapped people and people in wheelchairs, and he's like, there's nothing for big people. They don't make shit for big people. And it's showing photos of him on a plane, you know. And don't forget, this guy went to Japan a million times back in the 70s, and it was not fun to fly in the fucking late 60s, early 70s in planes, man, especially being the size of Andre the Giant was. So the guy endured a lot of shit, you know, to go overseas and to wrestle where he did. And the thing that gets me the most is he was only 46 years old when he died. And he seemed like a guy in his, like, 70s. You know what I mean? So it just goes to show you how fast the body degenerated and went to shit on him at the end, and which sucks because, you know, he was only 46 years old, this dude. You know, he was about to quit right before they did WrestleMania 3. He was like not feeling good. His back was fucked up. He had to go for an operation. He had a knee operation. He had all kinds of shit you'll see in the documentary. And long story short, he was like, I'm done. I can't do nothing. So Vince McMahon called him up, and Vince was like, Andre, listen, what's going on? How you doing? How you feeling after the operation? And basically Andre was like, yo, I'm done. And he's like, what do you mean done? Done wrestling? And he's like, no, I'm done altogether. And he's like, what do you mean, with life? And he was like, yeah, I'm just done. And he's like, I'm just gonna wait to die now. And Vince kind of in the documentary was like, well, let me ask you this. And he pitched him WrestleMania 3. And inside the documentary, that re-sparked Andre again. Like, it made Andre, you know, want to do it again, want to wrestle again, want to get out there again. So he started, you know, they started promoting out WrestleMania 3. And when they did, you know, sure enough, they hit a grand slam. Like, they knew it was going to be big. They knew it was going to be huge. But it got bigger than what they thought, WrestleMania 3. And in the documentary, Hogan tells about when, I mean, he tells a lot, Hogan, and some of the stories that he told were like, wow, like that's fucking crazy. Like, for instance, the finish for WrestleMania 3 was totally up in the air. Even at the Pontiac Silverdome, whatever it's called, Silverdome, even when they were at the Silverdome that day getting ready for WrestleMania 3, they still didn't know if Andre was definitely going to do the finish that Hogan and McMahon wanted the finish to be. Okay, and this is told in the documentary, and in the documentary, McMahon says, no, you know, I had it all under control. And basically, Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea, was nervous throughout the whole week leading up to WrestleMania 3, and kept asking me, is the boss going to let this happen? Is he going to go with it? And I kept telling him, Terry, it's okay. You know, I took care of it with Andre, and he's going to do the right thing. So Hogan would just be like, okay, you know, like, okay. But, you know, like, what's the finish? And McMahon would be like, well, we got to ask Andre. And it kept going to where he would go to fucking McMahon again, and he did not want to go to Andre. None of these wrestlers you'll hear over the documentary would ever go to Andre and be like, what do you want to do out there? Or what do you want to do? Because Andre would just go out there, and if he wanted to, he would beat everybody. Like, literally, don't care what the promoters say, don't care who said who should win or not. Basically, he never really lost a bout because it was always Andre would go into these different places, these different, you know, areas when it was all these, you know, different wrestling companies back in the day when you had the territories, and he would go in there for like 5-6 weeks at a time and then leave and go to another one, leave and go to another one. But every single one that he went to, it was like almost in the contract that you wouldn't beat Andre, you would never pin him, but he might sell for you a little here and there. And if he did, that would put the hometown guy over big time. So they wouldn't care if they ultimately lost to Andre. It was just, hey, I did good against him. I got some kicks and punches and got him down on the ground type of thing. And that's what Andre did for fucking how long, how many years, almost 20 years, 15, 16 years, I think it was, in between the 70s and the late 60s and early 70s and late 70s, when he was still really wrestling in territories. In the 80s, when he came to the WWE later on, you know, obviously he was much older. He looked much older. He really wasn't much older, but he looked much older and moved around like he was much older. And that fucking WrestleMania fight, the WrestleMania 3 fight, was basically Hogan and him. Like, I mean, come on, compare these two to wrestlers nowadays, and it's like night and day. You know, the wrestlers nowadays, they fucking move around, they fly in between the ropes, they fucking fly over the ropes, they go up on the third rope and, you know, do these sick fucking flips and twists. And, you know, obviously wrestling was different in the 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way until now. Wrestling really has become an acrobatic fucking thing now that these guys would not be able to do back then. So, like, if you watch that WrestleMania 3 match, it was kind of like, you know, it looked like two old guys going at it, to be honest. But that was what wrestling was back then still. It was coming out of that whole, you know, pounding ground type shit where it was like, get a guy in a headlock and stay down there choking him for fucking 20 minutes, you know? Get a guy in a fucking full body bear hug and bear hug him for fucking 4 hours, you know what I mean? That's how it was back then. Drop a leg and fucking... oh, he body slammed somebody. Holy shit. You know, like a body slam was like a fucking big thing back then. So it goes and puts you into perspective of, you know, what the wrestling was. So if you watch WrestleMania 3 and you're a young person, you're a young dude, trust me, it's going to look foreign to you. You know what I mean? And I understand it kind of does look cheesy, the wrestling. But back then, this is what it was. You know, nobody saw any different. We didn't see that high-flying shit that we see now, which I do like. I do like the way the wrestlers are now, man. They make shit look real, especially like the flying knees off the fucking... This shit looks real. They definitely took it to the next level, these guys, within the last, like, 20 years. It definitely got taken to the next level. And it all started with the Attitude Era, to tell you the truth, man. Tables, ladders, and chairs, and just the barbaricness that was WWF back then in the fucking mid-90s and late 90s was insane. Hardcore matches, things change, you know what I mean? But this WWF was where, you know, you could have Hogan and the Giant stay in the middle of the ring for 45 minutes and, you know, have a pretty decent match. And they did. You know, Hogan pulled it off. So did Andre. And the way that Hogan explains that last match in WrestleMania 3, the way he explains that match is fucking insane, man. Because, like I said before, they didn't know that the match was definitely going to go down the way that they wanted it to, because it was all up to Andre. If he wanted to change his mind and not fucking, you know, let Hulk Hogan get over, that would have been it. You know what I mean? He could have turned around and said, fuck that, I'm not going to let him get over. I'm going to get over on him. And the rest of it, history has changed how we know it. You know, if you think about it, it would have been Andre the Giant winning that and not Hulk Hogan. And I don't know if Hogan's bullshitting, which I said before, I can't really trust him, but, you know, what he said in the documentary was, he turned around and said that when he pinned Andre, he still didn't know if Andre would stay down or not. He thought he might kick out. So, even in that fucking WrestleMania 3 historic match between these two guys with all those people watching, 90-something thousand people, Hogan still didn't think that, you know, everything was going to go down the way that it was supposed to be planned, which is crazy because I never knew that. And, you know, we've all watched that match a million times. It's been spoken of a million times. The irresistible object meets the, you know, I mean, it's always, you know, it's there. It's prevalent still to this day. The Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, I mean, like, it's always there, staring you in the face, that history. And I never knew that about it. Like, Hogan did not know going into that fucking day, going into that match, if Andre was going to say, hey, you know what, fuck it, I'll let you get over on me. Because nobody ever got over on him. No matter what territory he went to, no matter where he was, nobody won. Undefeated meant undefeated in wrestling, and he truly was. They also touched on the fact that these two fought a million times before WrestleMania 3. And the plan was made by Vince to forget about everything that happened before WrestleMania 3. All the storylines between those two, because they used to tag team a lot. Then they would fight each other a lot where they were enemies. Then they would tag team again. Then they would fight each other again. And it happened quite a bit. They fought all up and down the East Coast, West Coast. The reason McMahon told everybody, forget the history between these two and it starts fresh right now for WrestleMania 3 is because they were on a national level at this point. They weren't on the regular TV anymore. They hit cable TV, and McMahon knew that most of the people that would be watching now never saw these two wrestle before. Only people in the territories saw these guys wrestle. Now that things were a little bit different, local, it wasn't just local anymore, they put a whole new storyline in there. They showed when Andre poured the champagne on Hogan when he beat the Sheik, the Iron Sheik. You son of bitch, you fucking piece of shit. They showed him when he beat the Sheik and he won the belt and he went into the back room and he was celebrating, and who comes in? Andre the Giant with some champagne, and he pours it all over Hogan and they're celebrating. They showed that. They showed them tag teaming together and everything. They never showed them fighting each other. They fought each other a billion fucking times because it wasn't on cable TV. And McMahon looked at it as if it wasn't on cable, it didn't happen when cable first came out. And this is all said in the documentary. I mean, the documentary was fucking awesome. I so highly recommend to watch this documentary. Like, even if you don't have HBO, try to find this on the internet or like wherever you can find it. I'm sure it'll eventually pop up here on YouTube. But it was fucking insane. It really, truly was a great documentary. And even if you're a young kid, you're younger, and you don't really know of Andre, you don't really check him out, you don't really care, check this shit out. I'm telling you right now, you will not be disappointed in just to hear what this dude's life was and what was going down in the life of this guy and how the lives all intertwine with each other. Hulk Hogan's life and Andre's life and Vince McMahon's life, and this guy being from France and being what he became in 46 years, what this guy became was just... And then they showed parts of when he was making a movie right before he died, you know, The Princess Bride, which went down as one of the most famous fucking movies of all time in comedy. And it just, you know, he started being friends with movie stars, and people like Billy Crystal are in this documentary, and Kiner, Ralph Kiner, I guess his name is, Meathead from what the fuck is the name of that again? I forget. With Archie Bunker. But, you know, look at that. He knew everybody, Andre. Andre was the biggest wrestler in the world, literally and figuratively, because he truly was known all throughout the world. Like, he wrestled in Japan like crazy, man. People all knew him in Japan. People fucking loved him. People loved him all over the world. And when he did eventually become heel against Hogan in that WrestleMania 3, you could also... There's a part in the documentary that covers that too, where he was like a little uncomfortable being a heel because he was never really used to being booed and, you know, basically, you know, treated like shit. And he did that all for fucking Hogan to take over that spot and to take that business to the next level. And I got news for you. Even if you're watching wrestling today and you don't know who the fuck Andre the Giant is, just remember, the reason that wrestling is what it is today, and this is no joke, this is directly tied to this man, is because of Andre the Giant. Like, wrestling literally would not be what it is today without that dude. There's no doubt about it. He left like fucking an impact like you'd never seen before. He was one of the biggest draws of all time. They could have fucking just put him out in the middle of the ring for WrestleMania 3 and people would have fucking... They could have been like, he's not fighting anybody, he's just sitting in the ring. And people would have fucking still been there to see that shit. No joke. And it was great. It really was. Ric Flair was in it for a couple of things he was talking about. Ric Flair was talking about like how much this dude was drinking and how much, you know, there was a part on his drinking and his eating. They showed a part where he bought this big fucking, you know, I guess ranch or whatever in the Carolinas, and how he was settling down, kind of like, you know, he knew he was going to die. He had a tumor that was in there, and I forgot the exact name that they used about him and everything. He used was called the tumor, what it was called, and it was deathly, this fucking thing. And he did not want to take help. They also, like, talk about that, too, in there, that he just did not want help. He didn't want the doctors to remove this fucking tumor that he had and shit, which would have prolonged his life, which I thought was very weird. Like, why don't you want to... But maybe, you know, and a lot of people said this, that he was in a lot of fucking pain, that maybe at 46 years old, he was in so much pain that he just didn't want to do it no more. The one doctor they were interviewing for the documentary said that he was still growing at 46 years old because of the disease that he had. But his organs all stopped growing. So this dude's body was still growing, like, in different ways, you know, whether it wasn't going height anymore, but it was going out. You know what I mean? Like a fucking fat guy does when they hit fucking 40 like me. But he started growing outward, you know what I mean? And to him, that was catastrophic with the body that he had and the way that everything was, you know, going. And basically everything was growing except for his organs. And he looked really bad at the end. And his daughter was on the documentary, which was crazy. If this guy had a son, holy fuck, what that guy would have looked like. But, you know, and they also talked about how he was a fucking ladies' man. Like, the women flocked to him, and they asked Hulk Hogan, why do you think they flocked to him like that? And he was like, well, you know, he's just a big, lovable guy. And the guy who's doing the interview was kind of like, you sure it wasn't for other reasons? And Hogan was kind of like, well, I mean, well, yeah, for that too, I guess, yeah. You know, like, yeah, his cock must have been a fucking, you know, the size of fucking Tommy NC 2010's face, you know what I mean? It must have been a fucking foot-long roast beef fucking cane, you know what I mean? So, the documentary was fucking great, guys, and I highly suggest going to check it out. McMahon's interview was unbelievable in it. Like I said, he started getting teary-eyed and shit at the end, McMahon. And I didn't know whether to fucking tell him to go fuck himself or like what he did for that documentary, because I kind of had mixed emotions about it too. Like I said, you know, I had mixed emotions on the Hulk Hogan part of it too, to tell you the truth, because it's like, you know, Hulk Hogan made out, Vince McMahon made out tremendously, and then, you know, Andre just got, you know, just kind of. That's what you'll see at the end of this documentary. It was kind of like Andre was just left for dead, man. To be honest, you know, Andre might tell you nobody owes him shit, type of thing. But I don't know. It was kind of like he got left out to dry at the end, man. Really sucked, and it was sad because he winds up, you know, dying in a hotel room by himself after his father's funeral. So it's pretty shitty, you know, pretty fucking shitty, if you ask me. And the way that he went out, it was not nice. And he left on very bad terms with Vince McMahon. And Vince kind of was like, man, Vince admitted some shit in this documentary. He was like, when things upset me, I get rid of them. You know, when things upset me, I just I have a tendency of just getting rid of them. And I was like, whoa, like. You know how many guys he must have did that to over the years? Like, you know what? You're upsetting me. I'm just getting rid of you. I was like, fuck. But yeah, he said that. And he was like, not that he got rid of Andre, because Andre had to retire anyway, because he really could not do it anymore. Even though Andre really thought in his mind that he could continue doing what he was doing. He really thought that he could still go. You know, and all the boys, and you'll see Hogan say this, all the boys knew it was over, you know, and they just didn't, nobody had the heart to like really push him out, but Vince, and Vince was like, come on, man, you know, like you can't go anymore, and there's no sense in dragging it on anymore. And he was pissed about that shit. He didn't want to leave. He wanted to stand in the ring and just do what he was doing for fucking years later, you know, but Vince, you know, is a businessman, and you know, he's not running a fucking old age home. So, you know, he was like, hey, it's time to go. And that was it. And that sucks. But that's what happens to people, man. You get old, and it's your turn to say goodbye. You know what I mean? It's your turn to be the old fart on the block and to actually have to fucking retire and leave. And we've seen it a million times, man. If you're into sports, you've seen some of the greatest fucking players eventually turn around and say goodbye to what they love doing and, you know, what people love watching of them. And Andre had to leave it. And that was it, you know? And it was very sad. It was, you know, parts of this documentary were extremely sad. To understand the man's life and what he went through was extremely sad to see, like, 46 years on this earth. Yeah, you know what? That gift that he was born with, that at 15 years old made him look like a fucking Adonis. That gift that he was born with that made him heads and toes above the rest. That gift that he was born with that made him decide on things and call the shots any way he wanted to call them over anybody. And trust me, they showed parts of this documentary where he was mad at people, and he was actually mad on camera at people for real, like behind the scenes. And you will literally shit your drawers when you see this motherfucker mad at you, okay? And it's in that documentary. It's in the documentary. The guy is scary when he's mad. Fucking very scary, man. He was a dominant, cool motherfucker that only lived for 46 years. But did so much, man. Go check out this documentary by HBO, please. HBO is a Grand Slam documentary making fucking channel, and they're just unbelievable. And this documentary was really great. Vince's shit was really good. You know, Hogan really just, like, you didn't know whether to believe him or cry, to be honest. Like, you know, if everything he said was true in this documentary, then wow, you know. And there was one scene, and we all know the scene if you're a wrestling fan since the 80s, of when Hulk Hogan was on Piper's Pit, and out comes Andre with Bobby the Brain Heenan, and you also had the one and only, what's his name? Jesse the Body Ventura. Slackjaw Fraggers. They were all there on Piper's Pit, if you guys remember it. I'm sure you do if you're a fan from the 80s, or if you're a Andre the Giant fan. They came out, and Hogan didn't know if this was going to go over well or not, and he wanted to really put over Andre, so he put Vicks on his finger, and he's going to rub it on his eye so he'd start shedding a tear. And he said, I had no clue what Andre was going to do. And he said, when Andre grabbed my shirt and grabbed that fucking cross that it had around my neck and it snapped it in 2 seconds, he said, I didn't need no fucking Vicks, man. I was in shock. And you could see it on his face, dude. Like, that'll do that to you, man. This big motherfucker like that. Really just a fucking monster. I mean, a man among men. A man among men. Andre the Giant. Big shout out to HBO for this fucking documentary, guys. Go check this documentary out, please. If you have not seen it tonight, and it was on tonight, it debuted the 10th of April 10th. Guys, I'm telling you right now, it's on HBO on demand. If you have HBO, go on demand right now. If you don't have HBO, go fucking get it. Just for this documentary alone. I'll find it somewhere on the internet, because this documentary absolutely kicks ass. Big shout out to HBO for making this documentary. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Just dropping some what I feel on this documentary, and it was great, man. It really, I seen a lot of shit on him before, Andre. I've looked it all up. I've seen all the little documentaries that have been made about him, all the little shows that have been made about him. This one is the one to watch if you really want to know who the man himself is. You really want to know what went down during these huge fucking matches, during this, like, huge shit from when I was a kid. It's all there. Go get HBO and get yourself on there right now and go check out this fucking show. I'm telling you right now. Unbelievable documentary. All right, so long, everybody. Big shout out to the Patreon family. Thank you guys so much for being on here, and hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you Wednesday night at 9 o'clock for Foul Mouths Live. Peace out, everybody.